Hi everybody, in this video we'll take a look at using loops inside of Visual Basic. So when we want to repeat a statement or statements inside of our program, we use loops. If you're used to other languages, you're probably used to for loops and while loops. VB has the equivalent. Visual Basic provides us with for next loops, which are equivalent to our for loops in other languages. And there's also do and while loops, and Visual Basic provides 4 versions of those: the do while, do until, loop while, and loop until. There's also an easy way to create an infinite loop, and Visual Basic provides us with a nice way to enumerate and loop through an existing collection as well. So let's take a look at some of those. What I've created here is a simple Windows Forms application with a list box and a button. When we click the button, we will implement a loop. Clear what I have here, and we'll populate that list box with some values. So first, let's take a look at the most basic type of loop, the for next loop. This is the same as the traditional for loop. VB makes it easy to increment by a value other than 1. So traditionally, we think of a for loop, we think of incrementing by 1, and VB turns that upside down. We're going to increment by a constant value, but it doesn't have to be 1. So the way we write this is we say for I equals 1. So we have created our counter, and now we're going to create a range. So we're going to say from our counter I equals 1 to the value 100, and we're going to just populate that list box with the value from our loop. So say I. So let's go ahead and run this, and you'll see that we're going to have a loop that goes from 1 to 100. We'll populate that list box with values from 1 to 100. Okay, so very basic for loop. Another thing that we can add is step, and step indicates how we're going to increment the counter. So in this case, we'll say from I equals 1 to 100, step by 10. Let's make that from I is 0, so that we land on 100 here. So now we have I is equal to 0, and you see it counts by 10. So our loop control variable is incremented by 10 now. Alright, so let's take a look at the next type. One thing I want to mention is be careful if you modify the loop control variable inside of the loop. You can do that, but for instance, if I modify the loop control variable by assigning it the value of 10 here, what we've done in essence is create an infinite loop. It's okay to modify the loop control variable inside of the loop, but it's definitely not best practices. You can see here we've frozen our program. To stop that, you can click on debug and terminate all. So best practices say don't modify the loop control variable inside of the loop, although you may run into a case where logically it makes sense and you need to do it, but best practices stay away from it if you can. Okay, now we have the equivalent of a while loop. We have that in the do and loop statements. We have 4 variations of the while and do while statements. So there's the do while, do until, loop while, and loop until. The do while and loop while allow us to loop while a condition remains true. So here's an example of a do while. We say do while I actually let's create our, we have to create our, just like any other language in a while loop, you should create your loop control variable prior to the loop, and then we'll say do while I is less than 101, And again, we'll just say list box 1.items.add I. And another difference between the do and while loops is that we need to modify the loop control variable inside of the loop, as opposed to the for next, where it actually does it inside of the for next statement there. So we'll say I plus or equal to, and you'll see that we increment by 2, and we're going to do it until I is less, till this condition evaluates to false. So if I is greater than 100, it's going to end our loop. Okay, another variation to this is to put the while at the end. And in this case, what's going to happen is it's going to execute the loop body the first time through and then check the condition, and it'll continue executing the body while this statement is true. When it becomes false, it ends the loop. So the difference between the do while and what we call here is the loop while is that the first time through in a loop while, it always executes regardless of any condition. And the do while, we check every single time, including the first time. So let's go and execute this. You'll see that the results are pretty much the same. Now, the exception comes when we say it equals 101. Now notice that actually we're not going to okay. Now notice that it adds the value of I one time, even though our loop while condition is false from the start. So that's the difference between a do while and what we have here called a loop while. Now we can also flip our logic upside down. We can change our logic so that it says, let's just assign that a value. We can say do until, and now instead of looping until our condition becomes false, it loops until our condition becomes true. So now we'll say do until I is greater than 99. And you'll notice that the results are very similar, although we've basically just changed our logic. So now with the do until, we're testing until this becomes false, as opposed to the do while, where we were testing until it becomes true. We can do the same thing. Instead of a do while, we can put the until condition. Now it's no longer a do until statement. Now it's a loop until, and same consequences, changing it from a do while to an until while is that the first time through we do not test our terminating condition. So 4 types of while statements. There's the do while and loop while, which tests to make sure that the condition is still true. And then there's the do until and the loop until, which tests to see if a condition is true. So do while, loop while, will keep executing as long as it's true, ends when our condition becomes false. Do until and loop until, the reverse logic. So it's going to test to make sure a condition is not true, and when it becomes true, then we terminate the loop. Okay, so we also have an easy mechanism to put an infinite loop in there. And the construct for game, for example, we're always going to We have an infinite loop running in the background. We can easily do that. We want something to just continue running. We say do and loop at the end, and this will just run forever. Okay, one other thing that I want to show you that's nice about Visual Basic is it allows us to, let's just do for I equals 1 to 10, and we'll just populate it with a real simple list of numbers here. So another thing that Visual Basic provides us with, and I'll just add another button to demonstrate this, is with the ability to enumerate a list. So we have an existing list, and we'll just use the list box that's already provided, and we can say for each, and then a name, arbitrary name, in, and the name of our collection. And our collection here in this case is listbox1 dot items. And what we can do is go through each item in our list, to access the value. So a really quick loop that loops through each item in our list box. Remember, a list box is simply an items collection with index 0 through the length of the items collection minus 1. And we've really quickly created a for loop for each item in our list box items, and we loop at the next statement. So let's go ahead and first we'll populate our list box, and then we can see that we can easily loop through each item. So a nice shortcut to enumerate and loop through each item. So I know the do or while loops got a little confusing there. Remember, there's the for next, and we have the loop control variable, the range, and also in VB we have a step, which allows us to modify the loop control variable by something other than 1. And then we have the do while, do until, loop while, and loop until, which we terminate on some indefinite condition, true or false, depending on which version we use. We also have a way to add an infinite loop real easy. We just say do and loop at the end of the block. And we have the for each, which enumerates the items in a list, collection, or an array. Probably the easiest way to loop through an existing collection. Gives us a variable that we can access all the properties and methods of an object if it's an object type in the list collection. So very easy to create a loop in Visual Basic. I suggest you try out each of the different ways and see how really easy it is to create loops in Visual Basic. Thanks.